Representative James Talarico of Texas, currently residing in Illinois, traveling around not with breakfast tacos, but with a Texas state flag, appeared yesterday on the Will Cain Show. Now, James Talarico, for those of you who do not know, is a rising star in the Democrat Party. And in fact, his appearance yesterday with me seems to be further evidence that he's the future for Democrats. At least that's what's being said virally. Let's set the stage with a few more ornaments. James Talarico has been laundered, filtered through not just mainstream media, but those who seem to define what is a conversation of goodwill, what is a conversation of integrity, what is a true search for the truth. His star has popped because James Talarico has appeared on Joe Rogan.
I guess all I'm pushing back on is that second step of it's always going to be this way.
Right. It doesn't have to be this way.
That is the key step.
Right.
So I'm
That's
not
because you need to run for president.
Yeah.
We need someone who's actually a good person.
Well,
because the Democrats have very few candidates.
We need somebody who is a good person. And with that youth pastor voice and that middle school teacher demeanor, one would think that's the actual integrity, that's the actual character of James Talarico. Style over substance. As I've often quoted, Ronald Reagan's communication advisor said it's 80% how you look, 15% how you sound, and only 5% what you say. James Talarico has all the trappings and stylings of someone who's different, that he's not simply a regular politician. How is James Talarico different? Well, in one respect, he went to seminary. He's a pastor. Oh my, we're dealing with someone of really high character who just so happens to be a Democrat. Well, I would like to explore that character in all of about 10 minutes. That's how much time I gave James Talarico yesterday on the Will Cain Show. 10 minutes to discuss why he has abandoned the state of Texas, why he has carted off his college dorm room Texas flag and flung it behind him at the La Quinta outside Chicago. I wanted to talk about who's funding this foray, multi-week foray into Illinois. George Soros and Beto O'Rourke both have PACs that are funneling money into Texas politicians. And when asked directly, Talarico told me no money from Soros. Accepting one's integrity, they hope that would be true. Does he deserve that benefit of the doubt? Is he worthy of the rising star? Well, in 10 minutes and on the internet afterwards, Talarico uttered no fewer than 4 blatant lies that he then used to pretend somehow he slam dunked on Fox News. Let's explore it. Let's do it together. And James Talarico, wherever you are out there, banging around Wrigley Field, you are always welcome to come back and have this conversation with one of the few people in media who does not cut and run, but who'll look you dead in your eye. Take some losses and take some punches. This ain't a game. It isn't WWE. It's real life. Sometimes I'll be wrong. But one thing I will never do is lie. Here's what Talarico posted after our 10-minute conversation yesterday. He went to every social media platform, TikTok, X, and Instagram, and posted the following. He said that he went on to Fox News and told the truth about redistricting and the power grab in Texas. I asked a simple question. If Republican policies are as popular or so popular, why do they need to redraw these maps and not run on their policies? Obliquely, he says he, referring to me, Will Cain, refused to answer and cut the interview short. To that, something I rarely do, which is dive into the mud of viral social media, responded in this way to Talarico. I told the representative, oh, James, I expect internet trolls to distort the interview, but you were there. I respectfully gave you 10 minutes, an eternity in cable news. And in that time, you had no answer as to why you've abandoned your job. You can take a flag to Illinois, but you still cut and run from Texas. There's an interesting thing about the way that it works on the internet, especially now on X. You post clips. We post clips. Perhaps some of you consume Will Cain Country on Instagram or on X. But what I've learned is, wherein we used to say no one will watch a 2-minute clip, we have to reduce it to 30 seconds. The truth is, nobody watches a 30-second clip. Everybody reads the caption above the video and presume that is what has happened in the video. From there, by the way, dirty rags in the media run headlines based upon the caption of an X post. And now you've laundered it and filtered it through the trappings, the pretense, the costume of credibility. And you have now manipulated the truth. And only in certain moments can you look back and go, what was actually true? Let's walk through it one at a time. This morning, I'm as guilty as everybody else, is the first time I actually watched the video that Talarico posted. He posted approximately 1 minute and 10 seconds of a 10-minute conversation. In that 1 minute and 10 seconds, he jump cut edited our conversation twice. Do you know what a jump cut edit is? He cuts out portions. He takes portions of one segment of the interview and abuts it to another segment of the interview. He, in that, tried to put together two moments where he thought he was creating a slam dunk and I was flustered or faltering. And then he cuts the video off at the very end, seeming to fulfill the caption. He cut the interview short. Do you care about the truth? I'm serious. I ask you that question. If you disagree with me, if you're on the left, I only ask you one question. Do you care about the truth? Let's walk through the truth and the 4 lies uttered by the rising star of Democrats. Number 1, Talarico tells me in a moment of great victory, as I point out, that Democrats have 100% of the seats in Massachusetts, and yet 35% of the vote is Republican, pointing out that it is a gerrymandered state, as is Illinois, as is California, and you're making a big to-do about Texas doing something to a lesser extent than Massachusetts. Talarico then seems to come over the top with, but did you know this, Will? Representative, you gave the ballgame analogy. In my view, what has happened here is you've done something in certain states, and you don't like it when it's done in Republican states. And now you're saying you've done the same thing as us. You've done the same thing as us, and we are going to, by the way, if you do it, we're going to ratchet it up even more, in the words of Gavin Newsom.
My party has never gerrymandered in the middle of the decade at the request of the President of the United States, nor would we. The only way this is going to happen in blue states is if Texas executes this power grab. You mentioned Massachusetts. Right. Do you know the party of the governor that signed that map into law? He was a Republican. It was a Republican governor that signed that map into law. So I just want to be clear with our facts, and I don't want to muddy the waters. All of us, whether we're Democrats, independents, or Republicans, we should stand up to politicians who don't want to face accountability at the ballot box. That's exactly what's happening here. And I asked you, if Republican policies are popular, why do they need to redraw these maps? Why?
Number 1. If Republicans' policies are popular, why do they redraw these maps? The implication being that Republicans are rigging the game for unpopular policies. Currently, congressional Democrats have the lowest rating in the history of the United States of America, the lowest approval rating in the history of the United States of America. In the state of Texas, where the game is supposedly being rigged, Republicans own an overwhelming majority in the state and Senate. They also own the governorship. President Donald Trump won at a national level overwhelmingly over Kamala Harris. All of this evidence of popular policies. Lie number 1, Republicans are doing this because their policies are not popular. Lie number 2, Talarico suggests that a Republican governor approved of that map drawn in Massachusetts. The point of that line is to suggest to me and to you who is listening, even in Massachusetts, it was a bipartisan support for that map. That is lie number 2. Charlie Baker was the governor of Massachusetts in 2020 when that map was drawn. Did you know exposing the lie. That Democrats controlled a supermajority of the Massachusetts legislature, meaning they had a veto-proof majority. There's nothing the Republican governor could do. Nothing. If he had vetoed it, no problem. They moved forward with that same map. Charlie Baker did something that he had to do. It wasn't endorsement, wasn't bipartisan, wasn't nonpartisan. But Talarico lies to you and to me in their face. Now, if you want to criticize me today for not knowing that in the moment, that's a fair piece of criticism. I didn't know that in 2020, Democrats had a supermajority, a veto-proof majority in Massachusetts to call him to the mat in that very moment. As was the case when he brings up obliquely this idea of Democrats actually wanted to outlaw gerrymandering. That's what they wanted to do. In fact, they put a bill on Congress's floor. Outlaw gerrymandering. Republicans love rigging elections so much that they voted down a quote-unquote gerrymandering law. Here is that moment.
Do you know how many Republicans joined Democrats in the U.S. Congress to ban gerrymandering? All the Democrats voted for it. 0 Republicans voted for it. 0.
It's an odd.
So
it's an odd.
You can spare me
odd,
the both sides rhetoric. It's clearly one side that is trying to rig the rules in the middle of the game. This is like 2 football teams coming out of the locker room at halftime, and the team that's ahead says they want to change the rules for the second half so they can win the game. All of us would be throwing food at the TV if that happened. We don't accept cheating in our politics. We don't accept cheating in our relationships. We shouldn't accept cheating in our elections.
I appreciate whatever you just referred to about the number of Democrat congressmen that I'm unfamiliar with who made this against Republican Congress. Here's why I'm unfamiliar with that. And again, I'm open to criticism that I should have known that in the moment. But he vaguely refers to a gerrymandering law. And what was he talking about? What gerrymandering law did 0 Republicans vote for? Well, he's referring to 2 potential laws, one coming out of the Senate and one coming out of the House. These are in roughly 2021. Those laws, by the way, are entitled, I want to make sure I get this right for you because you deserve facts, the Freedom to Vote Act and the For the People Act. The For the People Act, H.R. 1 coming out of the Senate, the Freedom to Vote Act coming out of the House. No Republicans voted for that. Weird. I guess it means Republicans like gerrymandering, right? Exactly as the pastor suggested. Exactly as he suggested. It's not a both sides thing. Democrats don't like gerrymandering. Republicans like to cheat. And it's there on the voting record. Did you know that both the Freedom to Vote Act and the For the People Act, those bills included things like voting for felons, mandatory mail-in balloting, expanding voter ID to include things like college IDs. These were massive bills designed to blow up the integrity of our elections. And inside that, they put some things in there as well about gerrymandering. And by the way, you know this intuitively and with common sense. Congress doesn't create any narrowly tailored bill. Never. So you say, oh, the gerrymandering bill. What gerrymandering bill? There was no gerrymandering bill. You're talking about H.R. 1, where you wanted to explode mail-in balloting, do away with voter ID. And that's effectively what you're doing when you say, let me go and see if I can get a Pepperdine college ID laminated and printed off, and that'll help me get an extra ballot. Please, with your college IDs. He lies to you about a gerrymandering law. By the way, this one makes him like every other politician. It's what they do. It's why they pack everything into one bill, because then they can say, you voted against X. Well, I had to vote against X because I also didn't like A, B, and C, which you packed into that bill. But that's a lie. He knows what he's doing. That's a blatant lie from the middle school teacher. That is lie number 3. Then, finally, he suggests, and he goes to social media to say this afterwards, that I was scared of these questions, that I ran from these questions. And this is the part that really pisses me off because it impugns my integrity. And I'm the guy that invites these people on over and over. And by the way, pastor, representative, you're welcome to come back and talk about your multitude of lies. Because then he suggests that I cut the interview short. And he edited it to make it look like I actually did that. What he doesn't tell you is, these parts don't matter. There will be a part that matters, but this part matters for you. television interviews are almost always short, about 4 to 5 minutes. I'm actually pushing the limits because I'm trying to do something that's a bit more podcasty. I'm at times doing 15-minute interviews, sometimes doing 10. Even 7 minutes is an eternity in cable news. I had gotten wrapped multiple times. That interview was booked for 5 minutes, and I pushed it more towards 10. I had gotten wrapped. Why did I get wrapped? My producers don't wrap me because they're afraid of what's happening. They would never do that. And by the way, they never give me instructions in my ear beyond time cues. I'd pushed that interview so far that what I left for my final segment, which I have to do to hand it off to the 5, was 2 minutes. I had 2 minutes. You can look at the clock and see I came back at 4:58. I got to hand it off by 5. If I push it any further, I'm severely compromising essentially the way television works. So, having already done an interview, longer than almost any on cable news. By the way, he's not the first Democrat or Texas Democrat that I've invited on this show. I've had 2 others. He went longer than any others. So he's suggesting I ran from these questions and I cut this interview short. But here's the real part that matters to you, not the mechanics of TV. Is after I told him, I got to go, we're running short on time, I went another minute and a half in where we talked about, and I pressed him on who's funding this. He promised me with the trappings and stylings of integrity that he would not take money from George Soros or Beto O'Rourke. And then he joked around about missing breakfast tacos in Texas. All of this conducted with joviality, goodwill, and respect. And your rising star of the Democrat Party, the man cloaking himself in integrity with the middle school teacher voice and the pastor patina, goes to the internet immediately afterwards and says, the fourth and most obvious lie is which that I cut him short. Now, I ask you one more time. Do you care about the truth? If you care about the truth, you just heard it. And if he has the nutsack and the spine to come on, he's invited as well to come on and face the truth. But my suspicion is, like every fraudulent pastor that you've ever met in your life, and I know that you have, this man knows no more about God than he does about telling the truth. And that, I have to say, with some level of conviction. Because no man of God that I know manages to lie blatantly 4 times in 8 minutes and then triple down on the internet. Your rising star is a fraud. Your rising star can't go 2 minutes without uttering a lie. And that's the best you got, Democrats.